Yes, we'll wait for more 2 minutes and then you can start. I hope you all have got the sandbox access. I'll request you to just, uh, even if you are planning to build in some time, but at least get the access so that the teams can register and make an entry in their records. Also, those of you who have joined, I'm hoping that you guys are there on WhatsApp because WhatsApp is more it is helping us connect with the teams directly and asynchronously. You can surely reach out to us, and we have been discussing with multiple teams, solving, helping them in different fronts. Also, check out the other groups which we have created in terms of you're looking off out of any teams, team members, or you want to brainstorm on ideas. Please feel free to join those WhatsApp group. Aniket from Defolio. Aniket, can you share those links also here for the team reference?
Yeah, I just
Uh,
shared it in the chat.
Now, I think I can just quickly open it up and hand the session to Saurabh. So I'm excited to introduce you to our speaker, part of a knowledge series, which is helping the teams build on account aggregator and participate in the hackathon. Uh, so Saurabh will be presenting on reimagining financial services with the account aggregator ecosystem and GenAI. Saurabh is a founding member of Sarvam.AI and has impressive background in leveraging technology for social impact. He co-founded Openly AI, a mission dedicated to building open justice AI, and Sampati Guard, a Reserve Bank innovation hub incubated startup aimed at improving the financial access for women. He's also spent half a decade working to improve school education through his efforts with Teach for India and Center Square Foundation. Today, Saurabh will take us through how the integration of new age technologies like GenAI with Account Aggregator can revolutionize financial services. He will also highlight how the combination can enhance customer experience and drive efficiencies and create more personalized and inclusive financial products. So please join me welcoming Saurabh Karn as he shares his vision on how technology can improve financial services. So over to you, Saurabh. We want more interaction coming in from the discussion. Please use Q&A section in the Zoom, and you can just keep on sharing all the queries you have.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Thank you so much for introducing me, Abhishek. And thank you so much, everyone, for taking out time on Wednesday evening to be listening to me. Uh, for those who are joining from Chennai and Bangalore, I hope you are doing fine and you are keeping safe amidst all the rain. I am Saurabh, and I have had some experience in the financial space, looking at the next billion people and the financial opportunity that exists with that. And account aggregator is actually like one of the most exciting things that we came across. Currently, I am with Sarvam.AI, where we look at both the voice side of things, where we look at like how enterprises can really leverage Indian language stack that we have and the agentic application capability that we have to improve use cases which requires voice around sales support and those kind of things. And we also look at the knowledge work side of things. So without wasting too much time, I'll just quickly give you a little bit of background on what we do and then talk a little bit about how we look at GenAI and account aggregator as an opportunity, right? So we are a foundation model company, which basically means that we build foundation models. But we are a full stack Gen AI company, which basically means everything that uses a GPU and everything on top of it. We are interested in that and we build things around it, right? Which basically means we use open source models. We have our own foundational models. We have speech models. We have audio LMs, and then we build application and agentic stack on top of it. And in terms of our product, what we have is like Sarvam Agents, which is a multilingual, deeply agentic system which can do a lot of interesting functions with respect to talking to your clients and those kind of things. We also have API. So if you are someone who is building in Indian languages, and I think Account Aggregator in its fullest potential is an opportunity for the next billion. That basically means you will need APIs which can handle the workload at a population scale, which is really the mandate for our organization. We also have Sarvam Stack, which is a full stack enterprise grade on-prem solution. So you can take this system, put it into an organization, and it'll work. And then from a knowledge productivity side, we have started with legal. So we have a workbench where professionals can go and get their work done. Right. So Sarvam 2 billion parameter model is one of the first LLMs at this scale in India, and that makes our organization very unique. So we have a very strong opinion with respect to how GenAI, gets into the systems and enterprise. I'm just going to skip this, but this is probably like how we imagine India to be interacting with GenAI, right? So some time back, I was looking at some data with respect to how much voice usage is, and it turns out that almost 50% of India is on WhatsApp, and a lot of them send voice notes to each other. So very interesting user behavior in India with respect to demography who does not necessarily write, but they all speak, and that's the mode through which they interact, even on a smartphone and things like that, right? So there are issues with respect to the current implementations. One of the things that I have done in my life is like built some of the early versions of like speech to speech pipelines. And for you to be able to give very human like thing, there's a little bit of engineering that goes into ensuring that the latency is low, that the language support is very high, and then the machine is able to listen to audio clearly and then can respond with very human like responses, right? And Shuka, which is our audio LLM, which is available in 10 languages, is a effort in that direction where we are able to sort of shave off around 400 milliseconds in latency by using audio LM. So I'm not going to get into details of all of these things, and maybe what we will do is we will just I'll just take you through the storyline of what I believe is how we should think about account aggregator opportunity, Gen AI with a population scale mindset, and then we can interact, and that's where you can ask me all the questions, and I'll be very happy to answer. Right. So I think voice and account aggregator is really the opportunity for next billion people. And that is largely because one, voice is a very natural interface for us. We have never had technology which is good enough to understand what we are saying, is able to understand it over a diverse language set, right? And now through large language model, what we also have is a problem of easing out comprehension. So what is easing out comprehension in some sense, right? So if you did not have LLM, reading an insurance or a finance document, right, like that probably your bank, your insurance company is giving you, was going to be very, very hard. Could you read English? Yes, you could read English, right? So that's the literacy problem. But you still probably don't understand half of what is written in bunch of these documents. And that's where LLMs basically make it very easy for you to understand this, right? So this whole speech and LLM combination is very interesting because one, it solves accessibility at two levels. One, you don't have to type; you can interact with systems very naturally. And second, it can simplify things for you, right? Like it can help you deal with data which is otherwise very, very complex, right? And that is true for both the next billion people as well as professionals. And I'll give you some examples with respect to how account aggregator is also an opportunity for professionals in some sense, right? But essentially, one of the things that we hear a lot when we talk about account aggregator is the whole opportunity around credit, right? So I just wanted to give you some insight with respect to how the business of credit basically works in some sense, right? You have to basically you lend money to someone, and then you have to collect money from that person, right? And as someone told me very early in our finance journey, the business of credit is not of lending, because if you want to really give money, people will come and take it. The business of lending is actually like collections, right? And that's why being able to identify the right leads, knowing whether they have both the ability and the intent to pay, some of these things become very, very important decisions when you are thinking about credit, right? And all of these things requires data, right? So what we see here is, so I'll just quickly show you this thing, right? So this is from BCG report. It might be a slightly dated number, but what you can see is that the annual income of the next billion people would be like somewhere around 1.5 to 5 lakh, per annum kind of a thing, right? Like, or some ballpark like that. And by 2030, that number of households in million would probably like cross this, right? So one, there are a lot of people who are going to make so much, this much amount of money every year, and that basically means that they will now start having some disposable income, and they can start spending it on savings, credit, or life improvement products, right? Like including things which are income augmentation. But what we also see is that across different loan categories, right? So different kind of loans are given very differently. Say a mutual fund or an unsecured loan is usually of a higher interest, and that's where like collection efficiency is like an important coefficient to look at, right? Now if you look at this graph very carefully, right, this is actually one of my favorite graphs, because it tells you like how the collection efficiency changed with like pandemic. And as you can see that before pandemic, microfinance institutions, right, organizations who are giving micro loans in some sense to people, right, their loan efficiency collection is significantly above 90%. And during the pandemic, while all other loans, if you see, right, like there is some collection that is happening, this one basically drops to near zero,
सौरभ,
right?
इसको आप जूम कर सकते हो क्या थोड़ा?
Let
When you
me,
explain,
yeah, sure, why not? Let me do this.
yeah, this is better. Yeah.
Yeah, I have not done live editing ever, but this is good experience. Just give me 1 second. Right. So you look at this, and this is a fascinating one, right? Like what we see here is that suddenly the collection efficiency basically goes nearly zero, right? So why are we seeing this behavior? Why is it that suddenly like it drops? So what it turns out is that for a lot of lending operations that happens in India, it actually happens physically, right? So people are going, giving money, and then collecting, right? So while there's a lot of opportunity with respect to like digitally giving out money and collecting, there are a lot of barriers that people go through, because of which a lot of this collection happens physically in some sense, right? And very interestingly, once if you see March 2021, this again shoots up to more than 90%, right? So the collection efficiency again goes above 90%, which basically means that people are again paying back their debt and things like that, right? So we are learning something about like the way India borrows and the way India, like repays back. And this is ASSOCHEM's report, which is 2022, which is now 2 years dated. So sorry for the old data in some sense. But essentially, the whole cycle in some sense becomes like this, right? Like you have multiple income sources. That's a lot of informal India. There is no digital record for receiving salaries. Sometimes you get the money, but either you're not doing the record keeping or there is no record, right? And then you are also like transacting in cash. Now because of UPI, a lot of that is getting inside the bank account of people, right? So if I pay you or you pay me, that is recorded as a transaction in my bank account, right? But I may not have any credit history because I may have borrowed, but not borrowed from a bank, or I may never have had a credit card. So it is very difficult to assess what is my intent to pay, right? Like which is a behavior that is getting recorded. So if you ever have a credit card, by doing the monthly repayment, what you're showing is that if you borrow, you pay back, right? So all of these things, basically for new to credit customer becomes this problem, right? That you do not have digital records for your spend or buy or a behavior, and you have non-existent or bad CIBIL score, right? And this credit, this basically makes it very hard for the same segment to borrow again, right? And I guess that's where account aggregator and GenAI can exponentially improve the quality of financial services, right? So one, if you look at this particular scenario itself, right, what is happening is, now if you think about someone, say your domestic help, or someone who is new to credit, which is usually called thin file. Basically you do not have data where they have taken a credit and then they have repaid the loan, so there is no repayment history in some sense, right? Here, if you really wanted to break it, if you really wanted to break this cycle, right, what you would want to do is you would want to collect the digital footprint, and then use that digital footprint to lend against, right? Like, so that basically becomes a collateral, right? You are seeing for the patterns of like regular, income, inflow of income, or certain behaviors with respect to expenditure and things like that. And we see like a lot of financial products which are also targeting this. We also see that alternate credit model is largely this, right? Where if I have access to the transaction details of a person, I can potentially run a machine learning model or use a large language model because they have very good natural language capability. So when I look at a transaction, I look at the description, I can make certain inferences. And if I look at a lot of these descriptions together, then I can make much more different kind of inferences, which was earlier not possible because just the cycle of like getting one part of machine learning was very, very hard. When you have this general enough model, you can pass in data, you can prompt it with some data, and then you can start getting some insights on top of it, which can again be used for underwriting and things like that, right? So how we feel, at least like what my sense is that, with respect to account aggregator and Gen AI, there are a lot of different kind of impact that you would have. So first, I think the India stack itself has solved for a lot of these things, because one, if you wanted to, if I trace back, right, you have to solve to provide credit digitally and collect your repayments also digitally, right? And that's the only way in which you will be able to reduce the operational cost and lend to a lot of people. Or even if you are doing financial advisory and things like that, where you would need access to this data, if you do it digitally, you are just able to reduce the cost of service. And reduction in the cost of service is probably one of the fundamental problems that you will have when you are thinking about deploying it at a population scale, right? Just to give you a comparison with respect to when I say scale, what does it mean, right? When I was working in education, one of the things that we used to say, we feed one Canada every day through our midday meal program, right? And that's just the number of children who study in school, right? So we are a very, very large country. There is a very big informal economy which is slowly getting formalized, and then we have India stack, which solves for a lot of like independent friction points that just becomes a mesh of problems otherwise in case of like doing transactions digitally, right? But say professions like chartered accountants who are doing personal financial services, be it your income tax filing. I don't know how many of you have had interacted with C, or if you use tools like clear tax and things like that, right? A chartered accountant would look at your entire bank transactions. So the first thing that they will say is like, send me your bank account, like the slips. And then I'll analyze it, I'll categorize it, and then I will either file it for income tax, returns and things like that. Or I can also give you investment advices around like your, appetite and things like that, right? For companies in India has like around 10 lakh or 14 lakh. I don't remember how many of them, but like these are the number of companies that we have. So all of these companies have massive financial operations with them, right? They are getting invoices, they are making payment to vendors and contractors. They are receiving a lot of things from the client side themselves, and there are a lot of financial compliances that we have to do, right? Which again means that a lot of times you have to basically look at how the transactions are happening. If there are certain regulations that apply on interest credit or things like that, and then finally that has to be converted into report. So the way to think about it is you have these data analyst agents. So if you have used ChatGPT or any of these systems, this must be very familiar. And now you can think about connecting like account aggregator for doing data analysis on top of it, right? And now suddenly what you are able to do is you're able to do end-to-end compliance reporting by connecting data which is both private and public, and then send it to a GPT agent, and that GPT agent is going to look at all of this data, and then it's going to draft a report for you, right? Also, personal finance can be significantly improved. A lot of people today pay using UPI. A lot of people who do not have credit card, right? Like, so you get rewards through credit cards, and that's why people try to use credit card for Swiggy, Zomato, and bunch of these consumer apps. But a lot of people have also started to pay using UPI, which basically means all the spend on different platforms is also getting recorded on personal account, right? And now suddenly what you have in your bank account is a lot of information with respect to whether you spend on XYZ kind of a thing, how much do you spend, how can you, create financial discipline. So any product which is doing like, say personal finance management can now leverage account aggregator and GenAI to both analyze the records and then also come up with recommendations on how you should do it. And by the way, like GPTs are great at suggesting meals. So if you want to say cut down your expenses on any of the fast food apps, now you can also start creating personalized plans for people based on their financial data with respect to the kind of lifestyle that they want to sort of lead. Again, leveraging everything that is around identity payments, but now using GenAI and Account Aggregator, right? And it's not that we are very early in this stage, right? Account Aggregator has existed for some time, and the ecosystem has just like increased, right? So for those of you who do not know, the idea is that there is a technology service provider, but there is a financial information provider and financial information user, right? So financial information provider is typically someone who has to basically take the consent from the end user to pass on their data to another entity, which is again a regulated entity, to do some task, right? So you have like financial information provider and you have financial information user. But I think the key point here is that because we are in a digital economy and we are in digital payment systems, bunch of our digital footprint itself can serve as collateral, and that is the opportunity which can smooth financial journey for the next billion, right? And because we are one of the things that is very cool about all of these rails is that they are built on open network principles, and they are built in a manner that unbundles a lot of transaction and how it happens. Tomorrow, when other countries look at adopting similar rails, your solution might even be relevant to be expanded there, right? And that's the hope that and that's why I said for next billion and more. So one, you have opportunity within India itself, but as this ecosystem continues to grow, ability to get a financial information and apply Gen AI to create value is going to become very, very common. Uh, but the other interesting bit about Account Aggregator is that it's not just for financial information, right? Like you can share data through the Account Aggregator system itself. Largely, we are right now focusing on finance, but other kind of data sharing is also absolutely possible through this. So I'm just going to stop at this point in time, and I'll take any questions that you may have. I just thought we will spend a little bit of time going through all of these things, and rest of the time would be just interaction, and that can potentially help us learn a few things. Abhishek, we can potentially take questions now.
Yeah. So anyone who want to come on stage and maybe ask question directly, Ms. Saurabh? We'll just wait for a minute, Saurabh.
Yeah. If you have ideas on what you would want to build, I'm also very happy to, talk about it, discuss that. So you just feel free to ask me questions and don't think about it as something. There is no stupid question. A lot of these things are like just complicated in nature, and it just helps to talk about it. So please feel free to ask questions.
Guys, you need to raise hand and we can bring you on stage if there are questions around it.
Let's just wait. Can we confirm if they all have a raise hand button? Oh, okay. Avinash, I think, has one question.
No. So Aniket, can you bring Avinash on stage?
Yep, Avinash should be able to ask their question.
Hi Avinash, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, yes, I can. I think I have unmuted myself.
Yes.
Hi, Saurabh. Yeah, it was nice listening about the Gen AI scope. I just wanted to understand a bit more about how you believe uh, basically Gen AI would be able to, or LLM could be able to understand the patterns with respect to risk using alternate data. Now, when I talk about alternate data, generally I want to understand NTC customers who don't have a CIBIL scores, right? And
Yeah.
when you don't have a CIBIL scores, you are trying to go through their maybe social media profiles, something else. How you believe we will be able to achieve that using Gen AI? And have you experienced that uh, in building any of such pipelines?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good question. I think when we think about alternate data, it's a lot of different kind of data. So social media is one kind of data, right?
That
Uh,
could be social media is one thing. It could be, let's say, telephone data, or it could be maybe utilities bills. It could be rental records, means anything. Means currently rental record is not available easily, and we are not able to understand exactly how rental record it can be given to an underwriter. But yeah, all those could be a part of larger alternate data ecosystem.
Yeah, I think with all of this data, the opportunity really is that, see, practically what you will have to do is you'll have to open up a book. You'll have to lend to some people for which the data is available, and then you'll have to basically see how that portfolio behaves, right? That is how you are going to be able to sort of benchmark this data. Now, all of these alternate data providers, they're not limited to just the transaction. Sometimes even groups which go and digitize self-help groups, right? They are taking on clues with respect to how social groups are organized, and then they are trying to digitize them where there's already a culture of credit, right? And those kind of things also basically come into picture, right? So I think when you have this alternate data, one, I think the veracity of this data really matters. So for example, if you look at social media profile, right, one of the first things, and this is going to become an ethical AI conversation after that, right? What information do you have on social media that is really, really going to tell you whether the person is going to, repay the loan that you lend to them, right? There's the same question around, like, would you use an AI to, look at a person and then decide their credit worthiness, right? So essentially, the question becomes, in your alternate data, what are the signals that really affect the, credit worthiness and the ability to pay? So if you see that there's like 6,000, 7,000 rupees monthly transacting on a bank account, right? And that's coming from the same user, right? You know that this person is like paying recurringly. And that is probably the nature of a lot of like informal work that happens in India as well, right? But again, that can potentially be forged, and all of those things can also happen, right? So when you're looking at authentic data, when you're looking at alternate data, you have to both look at whether it really has the signal that can inform the credit underwriting decision or not. So that is the first part. And second, is that like high veracity data? Is it just a record, or is it a record which can be trusted upon, right? And both those things have to come together for you to be able to use this kind of data in underwriting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, means not any other questions I have. I just wanted to understand how Gen AI can be leveraged across this, because currently, when I'm talking about the use cases which people are trying to resolve, mostly they are around solving the human interaction
Mhm.
rather than solving the pattern recognition in underwriting perspective. As underwriting has been more regulated area before for lending for most of the developed nations,
Yeah.
that might be the case, but
No,
but
I think we have to look at it slightly differently, right? Like LLM may not be applied as an underwriting algorithm itself.
that's true.
Right? Like as of today, I don't know if it is already being used, but it will probably go through its own journey. So that's why when you say like LLMs are being used for like more customer support or upselling and those kind of things, that is one area. But then also the transactions that you get, classification of transaction is also an equally painful exercise, right? Like if you look at a compliance for a company or a person, classification of transaction is usually like a difficult task that LLMs can immediately help you with, because they can read text and then they have a very good ability to classify, right? So I think you have to look at the entire value chain of how the credit is given. Look at what is the documentation, look at what is the interactions that's happening, right? Like look at decision points that needs to be extracted, and then you will see that LLMs can really aid in n number of different points in time, right? Like, so it's not that you apply LLM at just the underwriting layer, right? There's a whole buying journey that the end user is going through, where interaction is definitely one, extraction, organization, and then making a decision is the whole value chain. And then you have to look at multiple points where LLM will be applied.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Nirav has also raised his hand. So Aniket, can you bring Nirav also on the stage?
Yep. Neerav, you should be good to go.
Hi, can you hear me, guys?
Hi,
Yeah,
Neeraj.
Nirav.
Yeah, hi. Very specific question on what you just mentioned, classification of the banking transactions. What sort of benchmarking have you guys done in terms of accuracy of the classification of banking or AA transactions with your LLM? Like how accurate it is, or what sort of training you have done? Can you share some insights on?
No, I can tell you I don't have the specific numbers off the hand. I'll have to find that. But current machine learning systems, their ability to classify records correctly, and deep learning models would give you at least like 10 to 15 percentage point jump with respect to both precision and recall, right? And that's largely coming from the fact that large language models are just generally better in natural language processing, right? So the baseline natural language processing LLMs are very, very good, right? And that's why the gains that you have, you get it immediately. So it does cause like 10 to 15 percentage point improvement with respect to the existing like state of the art classification model. But again, depending on the kind of data. So for example, bank transaction data is probably like very, very standard, right? Like it's just by and large like same for everyone, right? When you're looking at alternate data, again, what is the data that you're dealing with, right? If it is a multilingual data, then LLM's capability of being able to manage a particular language will start coming into picture, right? So when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about like very, very standard transaction data that flows through the financial pipelines. And this learning is coming from there.
So
Okay, okay.
sort of building on that, one challenge which I have seen while interacting with, especially companies who are uh, building a banking analyzer, is classification of your UPI transactions.
Yeah.
Any insight you can give to the team, or I think I should also put up like two, three ideas which you want to bounce off to the team who are participating in the hackathon, which they can actually build, and you see a lot of value which is there, or you see there are unavailability of solutions right now, or something which you are guys are building, you can, and you are looking out for solutions. That is also, if you can just spend some time on that. So first point was on UPI transaction. I think that is the main pain area. Otherwise, majorly all other transactions are mapped somehow, especially P2M transactions, वो mapping हो जाती है. But
Mhm.
UPI transactions peer to peer, that becomes a great challenge, and
Yeah.
you know more about, yeah,
Yeah.
how to solve that.
So one of the companies that I co-founded, essentially, works with that. My partner is leading that company, and essentially what we do is, so what Abhishek is basically talking about is P2M is, person to a merchant. So you go to a Kirana store, you make a payment, and that basically goes through one of the payment aggregators rails, and you are able to sort of like capture that transaction, and now you know that daily this is the amount of cash flow that's going into this account, and then I will lend against that, right? So here the merchant is getting that service through a payment aggregator, and that's why data sharing is really not a problem. What Abhishek is talking about, when Abhishek, imagine if I am a domestic help for Abhishek, and Abhishek pays me money, right? How do I get this data, right? And I think that's where like consent management becomes a very, very important part with respect to account aggregator, right? I need to then have an app where I am available, and then a lender can raise a request for me to share my bank details, right? And now, when you look at this consent management process, right, you would inevitably think about it on a smartphone device, right? And that smartphone device would have like a touch screen, and then you'll be able to do those click actions and things like that, and most likely you are thinking about it in English, right? And I guess like the biggest opportunity is that if you can do consent management in Indian language, right? And if you can do it over like the existing rails of instant messaging and things like that, right? So I think that itself is like a big enough opportunity. Second thing is, while 50 to 60% of the population does use like smartphone, and each family has one between like 3 to 4 people. And that's the same story. It's very interesting. That's the same story around edtech, where like mobile happens to be like a shared device in some sense, right? But that's a story for some other time. This phone, which is being used by the family, right? Like they sometimes won't be smartphones. They will be a feature phone, right? And now, what does a consent management over voice looks like? And then there is a whole aspect of solving security for that entire area. Because if you are going to be transacting in voice, right, your chances of getting duped would be very high, right? Your ability to talk to someone and really be able to check that that person is actually who that person is, right? Being able to solve it across different surfaces that Indians use, which is smartphones, feature phones, being able to solve it in multilingual, because a lot of people will not be able to read, and being able to capture data between like peer to peer and have some legal validity around it, right? All of these three things are where you will have to basically, you can, there seems to be scope for innovation. But I guess really what is going to tell you what works is your customers. So choose a segment, start working with them, talk to them, and you will get a lot of insights with respect to how do you get the data, how do you manage the consent, and how do you do it over a smartphone or a feature phone. Because a farmer looks very different than a migrant worker who is building in construction, right? So that's the gap in some sense.
So I clearly see that there is a need of assisted journey, especially voice is something which people can build on and it's very impactful. And
Absolutely.
also there are many areas where you have to think through how you can.
Absolutely. And I think the power really is that now you can explain. Right?
Correct.
See, earlier, you could take them through a buying process, but now before you take them through the buying process, you can tell them what are the advantages, right? What is exactly going to happen? Because people who have significantly less amount of capital, right? Like for them to be investing or taking a loan or things like that, these are like bigger decisions. And being able to understand how all of this works, right? Like the education, the end education itself, right, is very, very valuable. That can be massively scaled through Gen AI.
Perfect. So I think Abhijit, you have a question? And Aniket, can you bring him?
Yep.
And we have one question in Q&A section. Saurabh, can you just take
Yeah.
that?
Hello, am I audible?
Hey, yes.
Yes. So my question in particular is that since you talked about building foundational models, can you just let us through a journey on how someone, might start building a foundational model, perhaps in credit risk assessment, risk management, analysis. So what steps would they take? Where would they start? What is the starting point? What would be the ending point?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, right? So first, this person is going to answer a very important question. Do I need to build my foundation model from scratch, or can I use an existing foundational model and then build on top of it, right? And for different reasons, for like sovereignty, for licensing terms, you may choose to do one or the other. If you really choose to do from scratch, know that it is a very, very technically difficult problem to solve, and that it would require significant amount of capital, right? So most of the time, when they think about when we think about building Gen AI use cases for a particular vertical, we look at a bunch of available pre-trained models, and then we collect data which represents what is the task that I want to do, and then fine tune this model on top of it, right? So for example, let's say we want to build a FinLlama, right? Like we will call it FinLlama, which is a foundational model, which will probably do like, transactions and categorization, right? Like that seems to be one of the most common problem. So then what you would do is you would go and you would collect a lot of data. So again, what are the transaction categories? That's something that you will have to define. And then what you will do is you will go and you will generate a lot of data with respect to this, or you will collect some benchmark data, which basically means you will take real transactions and you will create a sample set of that these are the real transactions and this is what the category is. That may be small enough or like sufficiently big enough for you to have the confidence, and that size is going to vary with respect to whether you are doing prototyping or whether you're planning for something in production. So now you have a pre-trained model. Now you have some data where you know that if I give this transaction and these categories, I want this as an output. And then you run a LLM through, then you basically take all of this and then train a model. And now for the new transaction, then this model has not seen, right? it'll try to predict the right one, right? Is it going to be 100% correct? More often than not, it'll actually be, but there will be a margin of error, and that's the margin of error which basically becomes your risk coefficient in some sense, right? So what you will do is you will benchmark it against existing classifiers and then try to find out the delta, whether your model performs better than the existing model or not, right? So this is going to be the journey of training, say, a model by yourself, and then being able to sort of like do different tasks. But it'll be very important for you to define what that task is. Is it classification or is it education, whatever it is?
I know it would be a really difficult thing to answer as such, but what time do you think, for a short team, it would take for them to go through all the steps? So, like, if you have to plan, let's say you have to plan your actions for the next coming month or 2 months, what time frames can be allocated to different sections when trying to go through the problem and building the solution?
As you said, this is a very hard question for me to answer. I'll have to know a lot about your team, what are your priorities and things like that. But I would say measure your distance from having your customers say that yes, this solves the problem, right? So whatever you do, whether it is a fine-tuning exercise, whether it is a pre-training exercise, whether it is collecting data exercise, right? All of these, I think the decision point for you is to say that this is the user, this is what they are wanting to ask. How soon can I just iterate on this and show it back to them till I reach a point where this person basically says, yes, it is doing the transaction classification or any of those tasks, right, correctly. The answer to your question actually varies a lot with respect to task that you choose, and that's why it's going to be a longer conversation if we had to really do that, Abhijit.
All right, thanks. Thanks for taking the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can take the question in the Q&A.
Q&A. Yeah. So someone has basically asked, have you tried analyzing bank transaction basis of comments or period of transaction and providing any insights like P2P transaction of give and take on basis of the period of transaction, etc., or comments like sorry for the late repayment, paying now, etc. The answer to the first part is no, I have not tried analyzing bank transactions, right? That's the honest answer. Yeah. But I guess what you could get is some of the simpler stuff that you potentially could do is you could create like, those buckets that you get on your personal finance management app, right? Like food pe kitne, how much expenditure is there on food, how much expenditure is there on travel, how much expenditure is on books. Say, you spend a lot of money in Blossoms Library in Bangalore, then that, categorization would happen, right? Like, and now now you know something about that person, that this person spends disproportionate amount of money on books, right? Or spends disproportionate amount of money on coffee because you see a lot of transaction from Starbucks and things like that. But I guess you will have to have an inquiry into the nature of like the potential borrower or potential client and what their needs are, and then sort of think about what questions to ask. See, one thing is that LLMs are fundamentally constrained by the context that you provide. So if you do not ask deep enough questions, it will not give you, signals from the data which will be useful for you. So you'll have to really ask good questions.
Especially in P2P transaction, do you think that it is very specific to person? And if you want to classify, you have to, it becomes like, it has to be very person specific, right? So I have to pay some amount every month to my maid, as you said. It's a something like maybe some amount to a person who does washing of my car. It's like 500 rupees a month.
Yeah.
So it has to be very specific to that person. And are the models capable enough of detecting such person specific?
No, that's the point, right? Like one, just because there's a 5,000 rupee entry in your bank account, does it necessarily mean that you would get that money next month? What is the certainty around that, right? And maybe this transaction is not enough information around that. So then you will have to go and you will have to collect more data around that this transaction can actually be used for underwriting. That's one, right? Second, I think what the system will do is help you discover networks, right? You actually you would realize that there's a network in which you are a node, and then there's money flowing in and going out, right? And being able to sort of like see that network, and then see that network at like a large enough data scale, right? Like that's probably going to be significantly more useful. But because, as you said, right, like a lot of people would have thin files, That basically means they just don't have enough digital footprint for you to realize on, right? Like you'll have to start creating opportunities for them to experience and record that digital footprint. That in itself is going to be an opportunity, but I guess all credit is of similar nature, right? Like they will scrutinize you as a profile and what income segment, what education qualification to basically do the risk assessment. Um, Very, very expensive to do for you to be able to do it digitally, right? In which case you are able to reduce the cost of service and operations, right? You will have to figure out how to collect high veracity, trusted data. So just because I am able to share my record, right, like that might not be sufficient. So when how we think about alternate data is going to change, right? So let's say between you and me, I can create a bot in the middle, right? Like a GenAI bot which talks to you because you're my employer and I am your help, and probably you are my employer and I wash your car, right? And then it is basically verifying from both of the people that, okay, yeah, this network both appears on my transaction as well as on my phone, right? And that I am able to use GenAI to verify it, right? I'm just throwing out ideas, in terms of like what could be done, but you have to get into the relationships and the networks of money that people are in.
Great. I think one more question has come up.
Yeah. What is the best way to collect market research of a particular tier 3, tier 4 city, small town, and mandal
Bundles.
kind of areas about income levels of inhabitants, kind of occupations? Go and talk to them. I mean, I can tell you that okay, so let's take an attempt, right? Like if we really had to do a deep market research in tier 3 and tier 4 cities, and we can't spend that much money on this, how would we do it, right? What I would do is I would create a voice bot, and then I will do some sort of a marketing for people to come and probably call a particular number or scan a particular QR code to talk to my bot. And that's how I'm going to we thought we could benefit from GenAI. Yeah. So you can create like large scale survey, and then you can have conversation with them, and then you can potentially analyze data with respect to what are they saying, right? They are about their income, occupation, profession. So you can do like qualitative study. One thing that excites me a lot about GenAI is that we are able to scale qualitative studies, right? Earlier, you could just get some attributes, but now because you can hold a conversation with the end user, you can take all of that data and post facto analyze to extract trends and things like that, right? So that's going to one reduce your market research. But to be very honest, like if you are, and I don't know, what exactly you do, but if you are starting out, I think before building this tech, it might just be easier if you are finance bent, right? It might just be easier to talk to like say 50 people and just get that dipstick data, right? And then do something and then expand and then do something and then expand, right? Don't try to think that a 10,000 sample survey is going to necessarily work, right? That could be a fatal assumption. But if you are close enough to your potential consumer or user, you are more likely to have solved their problem, which basically means that you would have created value. So that's how I see it, that yes, you can use GenAI, you can do large scale surveys. People may pick your phone, not pick your phone, may give you data, not give you data. All of those situations can happen. But if you are wanting to use account aggregator for financial side of things, you can definitely like talk to a few set of people in tier 3, tier 4 cities, and then get that information. Otherwise, this in itself as a service could be very, very useful for BFSI and a lot of like people in lending.
But to add on to it, I think Harish, you can connect with me separately. I know one of the TSP. I could just reconfirm it, but they give location-specific intelligence on the occupation level, what are the tentative income level of the area, and some on all those questions. What is the profession? Even I remember in my earlier job with Clicks, we were trying to figure out how many actually students come to school because we were into school financing.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
So basis the geotag, we can figure out, and through satellite intelligence, there are companies who can give you some insights on
Yeah.
what is the number of people who are there, which they can feed as an intelligence. So maybe if you are looking at for this hackathon, I'll connect you this to this company, and you
Yeah.
can take this up.
You can
And
also potentially look at like building some synthetic data. You can just generate a lot of data from large language models. That might also help. Uh, but yeah, definitely connect to Abhishek and look at whatever is the data available for some of these market intelligence.
So, any other question you have for Harish? This is answered, right?
Yeah, Harish said this on the Q&A.
Abhijit, you have another question, or it is by mistake? Yeah. Abhijit, you are on mute. So, Saurabh, is it possible for you to spend but what we are doing is we are arranging one-on-one session with the teams who are interested to get in touch. Because on webinar you can't give much time, but if possible, if you are interested, we can just roll out a survey, and interested people, we can align some slots with you. Just 15-20 minutes if you can dedicate for the teams as a mentorship session, it will really help them build the right product. Also, if anything, any service which they can use, if you can just share me the link on WhatsApp, we'll share it with the teams.
Yeah.
So that they can plug and play and use it for the hackathon building.
Yeah, I can just quickly tell you. I think we have 6 minutes. I'll just quickly use that to show you how you can increase the multilingual capability of your solutions, which is where I guess Sarvam shines. So you can go to Sarvam.AI. We build multilingual models. So if you're building voice bots or anything of that sort, what you can do is you can go to products, and then you can go to ASR, TTS. So automatic speech recognition is one of the components that we have. We have text to speech, so that can create audios and things like that. On all of these products, what you can do is you can click on dev docs, right? And this dev docs is where all the API and details are available. Now, one good thing is you can go to dashboard, and when you start using this, you automatically get some free credits for you to use in the hackathon, right? So all that you have to do is you have to sign up on the Sarvam.ai, dashboard.servam.ai, and then you will be able to both get code snippets for you to be able to do translation, speech to text, text to speech, and those APIs you can build into your voice bots in case you are building it, or if you are looking to translate documents, you can use those APIs as well. But I'll share these links with you, Abhishek, and then you can share it with me.
A small one pager will help, like how
Yeah,
we can do it.
I'll put you in that thing.
Sure. Great. Thanks, Saurabh. We have another masterclass after this. So, guys, please join our next session, which is on risk management. But really, Saurabh, it was a very interactive session, and we could get a lot of stuff, and hope the teams will benefit from this session and build on this. Thank you. Thank you for joining in, and
Thank you
we'll
for
reach out
having
to
me.
you for one-on-one session.
For sure, for sure. Take care. Take care, everyone. Bye, Abhishek. Thank you so
Bye.
much, team. Bye.